Hey everybody, welcome back to Mob Vlog. And today is Monday, March 28th. So I didn't even have to look at my watch to see that one because it's my birthday today. And what the hell? How could I forget that day? So Mob Vlog, Monday, March 28th. And cool day today. We have a guest on that we have not had on before in the past. So stick around. You're in for one hell of a ride today. Welcome back. It's Mob Vlog. Welcome to Mob Vlog. Frank Calabrese Jr. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on the show and doing an interview. And also thanks for the copy of your book, Operation Family Secrets. I'm going to be honest, I'm still working my way through the book, but I have heard about your story, and I have watched a couple of other interviews that you've done. So I'm excited to get to learn today who you are and what your story is. And I'm certain that everybody else on the channel is also looking to hear your story and find out just exactly who you are right from the horse's mouth, right?
That's great. Looking forward to telling it.
Let me just
talk about the book. One thing that a lot of people, what I try to tell everybody is my story is really a family story. Our family business was the outfit or organized crime or crime.
Yes, and your father was a member of the Chicago outfit, and you did do a lot of different things for him, correct?
Yeah. I'm actually a little bit about me. I'm half Irish and half Italian. My mother's side was my Irish side, and my Italian side was my dad. I grew up in Chicago. We slowly migrated down Grand Avenue. My dad his family grew up in the Patch, Grand Ogden, actually on Ohio Street. On my Irish side, my grandfather and my grandmother, they were West Side Irish. My grandfather had a bar many years ago on Madison. So, it's funny because family parties over the years, Irish and Italian in Chicago didn't really like each other very much. So a lot of times I was conflicted. I didn't know what side to pick. But I was kind of born into this, okay? And the reason I say that is because on my Irish side, my grandfather ran with the O'Donnell gang. The O'Donnell gang was a thorn in Al Capone's side in the Hawthorne area. Also, a childhood friend of my grandfather's and the O'Donnells was Bill McSwiggan. My grandfather was present and part of when they killed McSwiggan. My grandfather was able to hide behind the wheel when Capone and the guys were driving by to do a drive-by shooting at the Pony Inn out on Roosevelt. And my Uncle Ed, on my Irish side, my mother's brother, he started out in Cicero, and he rose in the ranks to be the international president of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union. It's Monday, so sometimes my words don't gel. Over 350,000 members strong for over 30 years he ran that. That's just my Irish side. My Italian side, yes, my dad and my Uncle Nick were both made members of the Chicago mob, and they were involved in a lot of high-profile murders, which we're going to talk about through our talks. So I was kind of born into this. In Chicago, you weren't supposed to bring your kids into this life. I know we want to talk a little bit about New York and Chicago at some point. In New York, you brought your kids. It was their legacy. So, when I grew up in Elmwood Park as a kid, and there were a lot of guys in Elmwood Park, a lot of high-ranking guys over the years in Elmwood Park. We were taught not to brag. We didn't stand on the corners and want to be mobsters. I went to a Catholic high school. I played football. I played basketball. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be a lawyer. So it wasn't like this was some goal of mine is to follow in my dad's footsteps, nor would my dad want me to follow in his footsteps.
Gotcha. So when, and I just want to say hello to everybody. I'm looking at your comments that are coming in here, and Greg Polly, Cindy Workman. By the way, Cindy Workman, she says, Frank, that she remembers you, and her and her husband were the first tour in your car.
Okay.
All right, Cindy?
And I hope they enjoyed it.
Oh, they did. They did. As a matter of fact, because they came out here to Vegas and they did the tour with me and said that they did one with you and how nice and friendly you were. And and gave really positive feedback. So
That's great. Well, hello and thanks for watching.
Dave Pritchett, he read your book and said it's a great book. There's some other people in here that say that they have also read your book, and it's a great book. Scott H. got a signed copy. That's cool. See? Got myself a signed copy too. There it is. Thank you for the book.
Get a little embarrassed when people ask me to sign books, you know.
Well, get used to it because people are going to want signed books. By the way, guys, if you do want to get a signed book, please take a look at the bottom of the screen and check out the website there, familysecretstours.com. You can get your copy autographed by Frank. Ricky Delta also has read it, so how can Ricky be wrong, right?
That's great. Hi to everybody. I see the comments coming up on the side and I want to jump all over the place. I went to Holy Cross, and I did know a bunch of the Hearst Street rats from Melrose. A lot of them were a little younger than me. I did have a lot of friends in Melrose Park and Elmwood Park, a lot of friends down at Grand Avenue, Reese Park, Chinatown, Taylor Street. We'll go through all those different neighborhoods. You know, it was a great life growing up. You know, as a kid, I idolized my father just like anybody did. I loved my neighborhood. I had a lot of good friends. I had a lot of great memories. I grew up in a 3-flat. In the book, I call it the compound. There was all families in there. I'm oldest of 3 boys. You know, I have my younger brother, Kurt, 16 months. My youngest brother, Nicky, 11 years younger. And, you know, as a young kid, I felt safe and I felt protected in my home, in my neighborhood. My dad was kind of like the family patriarch. He had this kind side to him. He always was looking out for everybody in the family. He did not like bullies. He always looked out for the underdog. A lot of people that know my father or met my father, they met a side of him that was a very kind and very generous man. He was very street smart. He taught me a lot over the years that I use in a legitimate way today. The problem was, and as we're going to get into it, is this life on the street changed my dad. A few of the people he was around changed my dad. My dad became a sociopath. As a young kid, my dad used to always say, you don't bring the street in the home, it corrodes the family structure. And he followed that rule. But, you know, over years, he finally brought it in. And it did. It corroded our family, a dysfunctional family. Not only did he do that, but I did the same thing to my family at some point later on with drugs and stuff, bringing it in the home. So, but there's a lot of great memories I have growing up in these neighborhoods. There's a lot of great people out there, you know, and as I said before, you know, I didn't want to be in the mob. I didn't even know what the mob was about. You know, when I would ask my father when we were young, hey, they're doing presentations at school. What do you do for a living? He says, I'm an engineer. I says, trains? He said, no. He said, operating engineer, local 150. He showed me an engineer card. I go, oh, okay. You know, we had an idea in the neighborhood, me and the other kids, that our dads were different, but we really didn't care. They didn't bring it around us. You know, all they always told us was respect everybody in the neighborhood and don't get in trouble. You know,
so let's get to this, because I'm seeing a lot in the comments, and I know people are wanting to know this, and you're saying a lot of good things about your father and about how he taught you a lot of things that you use in the real world today and all. So let's just put it out there. You wore a wire on your old man. Everybody's like, how the hell can somebody wear a wire on their dad? So
now you could say it. I know what everybody's doing. There's a lot of people.
There's people in the comments saying, "Where's the cheese?" You see what I'm saying? Where we're going here, all right?
You know, when you make decisions in life, there's titles, there's stuff that's going to come along with it. Okay, this wasn't a spur of the moment. Well, when it clears, a lot of people think, oh, he was a drug addict. He went to jail. He got in trouble, and he couldn't do his time, so he told on his daddy. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. That letter right there that I wrote, that was after I was in jail for over a year. Okay. And that letter, sometimes in life, you have to make choices. That letter was 20 years in the making. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I wasn't having a problem doing my time. But my dad, we made promises to one another when we got in prison. And when we got in prison, he found out I was divorced. And he always thought my wife was the wedge between us. And he seen what great time I was doing in prison. around other guys like Sonny Franchise, Mike Ray Patriarca, guys from Chicago, Shorty LaMattia. These guys are all telling my dad what great time your son is doing. I wish all their sons would do time like that. My dad had seen it as an opportunity to want to bring me back in. You know, the reason he brought me in the first place, as a young kid, and I don't want to jump all over, but I'll stick with the letter for a second, okay? Then we'll go back. So I'm in prison for 8 months with my dad. I was in MCC for about 6 months. Then I wound up in Terre Haute Penitentiary, locked down for about 16, 18 days, transportation. While I was in there, I started thinking, who am I? What am I made out of? What have I done here? What have I done to my family? What have I done in life? You know, and it was kind of like rock bottom. And I started, you know what? When I get home, I'm going to be a good person to people that were good to me. I'm going to be a good family. I'm going to do all the right stuff. I'm going to work. No more drugs. I had a powder cocaine habit. And I says, you know what? The one guy in life I've always feared. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that I respect what they're capable of, but I don't fear them. My dad, I feared for many reasons. I lost my fear in that jail. So I'm going to give my dad one more chance for me and him to work it out. We're winding up in the same prison together. I couldn't believe it. I'm trying to get away from my dad, and I wind up in the prison with him. We get there for 8 months. I worked on my relationship with my dad. But using what he taught me, he was a very smart man. When you want to judge truthfulness in a conversation, every couple of questions, you ask a question you know the answer to. And that's how you judge if somebody's being truthful. And I did, and he wasn't truthful with me. Okay. And I went back to my cell, and it's like I had tears in my eyes. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do here? What are my choices? I got to make a decision. I can't go on like that. He's trying to pull me back in when I get out. So I came down to two choices. You know, sometimes in life, we don't get the choices we want. It's the choices that are presented. And the two choices were, one, wait till me and him get back out on the street to straighten this out. Well, let me tell you something. My dad was a very tough guy. Chances are I would have been the one up dead, or we would have both been in prison, or both dead, whatever it was. But cooperate with the FBI. Now, growing up in my neighborhood, like a lot of people talk about, the worst thing you can do is cooperate with the FBI. They're the enemy. So what I did was I wrote that letter. I wore gloves in the prison library for fingerprints. I typed it for handwrite, didn't put nothing personal. I just sent a letter to the FBI saying, hey, I want to help you keep my dad locked up forever. He's a sick man. When they came, they thought I was doing bad time. Right away, they wanted to throw me in front of a grand jury. Prosecutor Mitch Myers took one look at me, spent 10 minutes with me, said, this guy's not doing good time. Look at him. He's working out. Look, he's not doing good time. Don't put him in front of the grand jury. He goes, this man has been going through something for a long time. He's had enough. So the FBI was like, what do you want? What do you want? I said, well, I don't want to be obligated to you. No disrespect. I says, I don't know you, but I'll do all my time, pay all my fines, no immunity, but I'm only helping you against my dad. I'm not going to help you against the mob. I don't care about the mob. They have nothing to do with me. This is about my dad. And that's what I did. At first, I said, would you wear a wire? I says, hell no, my dad's too smart for that. Then I thought about it. I got to get my dad in his own words, or he's going to be too smart. He'll manipulate his way out of this. You know, the reason my dad talked to me was because I went to him and told him that I wanted back in. That I wanted back in life with him. And he was so happy. He says, good. He says, the first thing you're going to do when you get out, he says, is I want you to kill Ralph Peluso, a guy who used to work for us. He goes, he batted me, and he goes, and that's the first thing. I want you to earn it. And you're going to take over the crew with Ronnie Jarrett, which a lot of people know got killed, you know, right when I got out to the halfway house in one of the last mob hits. And then what he was doing through these conversations is he was grooming me, because I hadn't been around him for a while, of who to respect on the street, who's running things, you know, and this was a lot of intense talk. I mean, out of it, on those tapes came in the trial, El Pizza Man Tornabene. Nobody even knew who he was unless you were in the inner circles or you were close to him. Okay, so he was telling me a lot of important stuff, which naturally hurt him in the long run. But you know, and we were also trying to work on our relationship. Was kind of sick and morbid because of the fact that in 1 minute I'm trying to put my dad away forever, and the other minute I'm trying to work on our relationship. So it wasn't about not being able to do time. My dad would have never opened up to me had I did one bad day.
Frank, hold on for just a second. I just wanted to say hello to everybody. Guys, hit the like button if you're just coming in here. And if you're just coming in, we're on right now live with Frank Calabrese Jr. He has a book out. It's called Operation Family Secrets. It's a good book. You can look at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to get a copy of it. That's where you can go to get an autographed copy. A couple of questions here from the viewers, and I just wanted to shout them out here. So CW said that he thought that he read your dad killed a guy he worked with before all the mob stuff. Is there any validity to that?
Yeah, my dad confided in me and stuff, and he was having a problem with the guy who worked for Jefferson Ice over there off of near Reese Park over there. And there was a guy, a tough guy, that was he was having problems with. So what he did was he became friends with the guy. He set him up. Dad was very good at that, very street smart. He set him up and he killed him. Never told me how, where, or what he did with him, but he just said, he goes, that's how my dad operated. If you got on his bad side, murder was an option. There's many murders that never came up in the case that my dad was involved in.
Calzone 83 wants to know, if it weren't for your father, do you think your Uncle Nick would have gotten into the mob?
Not at all. Not at all. So my Uncle Nick, he graduated high school. My dad only had an 8th grade education. My Uncle Nick graduated high school, graduated Steinmetz, and he enlisted in the Navy. He was a radio operator with top secret clearance on the USS Bainbridge and Enterprise during the Vietnam War. My uncle was also a butcher for a while over at International Meats on Grand, just east of Harlem. My uncle also was working with the riggers for a while. My uncle was a worker. Okay, he got involved with my dad because he idolized my dad, just like I did, and when you get involved in this, and it wasn't like, so when I was a kid, going back to this, growing up, if you guys would see pictures of me or anybody that knew me in the neighborhood, I was nothing of a mobster. As a little kid, I was so shy. I looked like Opie Taylor, Ron Howard from Mayberry RFD. I didn't want to go to birthday parties because I didn't want anybody to look at me. There were times I would get picked on or beat up by the neighborhood bully. Okay, I didn't. So one time the neighborhood bully's picking on me, right? So I start crying. Well, I wind up biting him between the legs, beating him up. We became very good friends years later. But I ran home crying, and I'm hiding in the basement. The doorbell rings. It's the bully and his mother screaming at my dad and my grandfather about hospital bills. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get something. I used to cry all the time too. I wanted everybody to be friends. The door closes. My father comes and finds me. Dad, son, I'm proud of you. Anybody that stands up to a bully, I'll probably pay any hospital bills. But if you're ever the bully, I'll break your legs. So as a young kid, it's not like, oh, well, my son's tough. I can handle myself, but I never caused problems. And so as I was growing up, he started giving me tasks to do. Son, I'm going to teach you about the street. You're going to learn street smarts. You're going to go to school and you're going to learn book smarts. If you know both, you're going to become very successful in life. So he'd give me these chores to do. Well, my friends didn't know I was doing these chores. It was simple chores. I would go to these bookstores with my uncle to empty money, do stuff like that. I do book work with my dad. It's funny because juice loans, that's where I learned all my math, not in school, it's juice loans with my dad. He had one of the biggest operations in the 80s and 90s. But so what had happened was I'd want to get this done right away so I can go and hang with my friends by the park, play basketball, football, all that stuff. So it was like chores, do this for your dad, be a good son. Well, the more I did, the better I was at it, the more he seen of him and me, and the further he brought me into this. There was a time when I finally bought into it. So I'll never sit here and tell you I'm a victim. I've made bad choices in life, but I never was a victim. So, when you buy into this, you buy in this with Vlad and Secret. I started a family. At some point, I seen my dad changing. My uncle seen my dad changing. My brother seen my dad changing. I seen the life changing on the street. Anybody who's from these neighborhoods seen these changes in the 90s. It was getting kind of chaotic. I wanted out. My dad's not good.
Just curious, Adam Rogue wants to know, how did the Chinatown Crew end? We're talking 90s.
Yeah, there was there's a lot of reasons why it ended. First of all, a lot of mob stuff in Chicago ended because mostly everything we made money from is legal now. Okay, so who is the new mob? The politicians. Look at what they're running the state with. And guys seeing, you got the FBI. They got a lot of tools. You're getting longer time for stuff that guys used to go away for 2-3 years. They go standing on, they go do it standing on their head, come home. Now you were getting 10, 15 years. They were taking everything from you. A lot of these guys are smart. So what they did was they went into different areas. Look, the simplest thing, I started these tours by fluke and they took off. It's a legitimate thing that you take from something you knew. So there's people around still, but the smart people, the people that were around then, they're doing legal stuff. So it's just kind of faded out, like the Irish mob did, like the Jewish mob did. You slowly move on to more legitimate stuff. So now your mobs are Russian, Albanian, Asian.
Mm-hmm. All around the world. You got organized crime being exported by just about every country, right? Benny Fazio.
A lot of guys in New York, a lot of guys that used to be in the life, and they'll say the same thing. It's not like it used to be. That's still a stronghold compared to the rest of the country, but it's not. It's guys are getting into other stuff because it's time has passed for Italian Americans. There's more money to be made. There's other options.
Benny Fazio is wanting to know if you consider starting a YouTube channel.
I do have a YouTube channel. I haven't really. I throw a few videos up, but yeah, there's a lot I'm working on, and there's a lot of stuff I'm working on. So okay. It will be in the future. Thank you.
How about this restaurant? Cindy Workman wants to know if you opened your restaurant in Chicago.
I did have a couple restaurants. I opened up Bella Luna on Superior and Dearborn in the 90s, and then La Luce at Lake Street and Ogden. Both restaurants, I believe, are closed now. Because of the way that they're gentrifying the areas and building. But and I had partners in both restaurants. I grew up working at Armand's. I love food. I love to cook. I love to work. So yeah, I had a lot in the restaurant business.
Jacqueline Moore, she's sitting at her desk enjoying the show. It's epic. She said, "Epic, Frank."
Thank you. Appreciate that. I want to, Adam. I know we're going through some stuff, but I had said this to, and I see Brian Glade. Yes, we had a house in Williams Bay. We never had one in Fontana. We had a house we rented out in the Fontana area that we wound up burning down for insurance money, which came out later on. But I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. It's all good.
I was telling you, me and you were talking about Sopranos, and I said the thing that intrigued me about Sopranos is that you get to see both sides of this. And that's why I said something. You see the family on the street, and then you see the blood family at home. And you also see how both affect each other, which there is that. There's a lot of people around it. They'll tell you how much it affects. And that's what I like talking about, because that's what it's about. I only know so much about the Chicago mob, stuff I've experienced, stuff I've heard from reliable people in inner circles, and stuff that I read about or hearsay just like everybody else. And anytime I talk, I always will tell you, I was involved in that, I heard about that from reliable sources, or I know just as much as you have.
Okay, Buster Keaton wants to know how. Let's get to the oil drum. How much money was in the oil drum that you took in Wisconsin from your family? Your dad, I guess, hid money in the oil drum, and it had a false bottom. It's like a magician. That's how a magician would hide something.
My dad had a lot of hiding spots. Okay, when we fell out, we found out years later, my family and I, that my dad had this sadness to him, this phobia, that if his family didn't need him, that they wouldn't love him anymore, and they would just abandon him. So what he would do is he'd always try to control us. He'd control me, my brother, my mother, my uncle, anybody he can control in the family, he'd do it. Okay. And so he'd always hold stuff. We used to cash our checks into him. He'd give us a little bit, and he'd say, "Here, hold on to it, our work checks." And I would invest with him, or I had businesses on the side. I always worked, always had 2 or 3 jobs. He was always my partner. He said, "I'll hold the money." And he would keep track. Me, my brother, I'll keep track. This is what I owe you. And then if you ever asked him for anybody, he'd say, "Hey, look, one day all this is going to be yours." So the money. When I decided that I wanted to leave, that I wanted to get away from my dad, I knew he had hiding spots. My dad owed me about $300,000 or $400,000. from other businesses we were in, money he had over the years, a home that I didn't get paid for. So I know I couldn't go ask him for the money. Hey, Dad, listen, I need my money that you owe me. I'm leaving. You're never going to see you or your grandkids again. So I did something. At the time, I thought it was really smart, but it was one of the dumbest things I ever did. I knew we had hiding places. There was a duffel bag by my grandmother's house that I went to take my $300,000 out, and there was about $800,000 in there. And I says, you know what? I'm going to take it all. He never comes here. I got into the businesses. I fueled my drug trade. I put money on the street. I said, I'm going to make much money as I can. And then I'm going to put his money back and I'm going to leave. Well, everything was going great. About a year or so goes by, and I decide, like an idiot, I earned that money. I deserve that money. I'm keeping it all. And I kept it all. Short time later, my dad shows up at my house and he wants his money that I took. That's the money. So there was around $800,000 there that I took. Now, my dad is a master manipulator. So in court, in the book, okay, I kept it simple. I stole this money from him. I blew it all, and that's it. He wanted to make a case out of the money and stay away from the tapes and the other stuff because he knew that he couldn't beat that. But if he made people have doubts in his mind about the money and made it look like I was just this nut job, that maybe it would help. Even the judge says, hey, to his lawyer, enough. I don't care how much he took. He took a lot of money and he blew it.
Okay, Cindy Workman, thank you very much. Appreciate your super sticker. That's really kind of you, sweetheart. I really do appreciate that. And CW, don't know if we want to go here or not yet, Frank, but any chance that you'll write or talk about murders that your dad committed, not brought up in Family Secrets? Any info on Sal Bastone, Hyman Larner, or Michael Corbett?
I don't have any information on those three guys. I know the names. I know my dad had a relationship with Sal Bastone. But other than that, I don't. When my father passed on, rightfully by law, I was able to inherit all his journals he wrote when he was in prison. And he has tons of journals. He has tons of stuff he wrote about. I am in the process of doing something with that in the near future. So there is a lot of stuff in there that has never been talked about before.
Guys, be sure to hit the like button. All right, there's almost 160 of you sitting here, and we only have 91 likes. So hit that like button, get the YouTube algorithms getting this video out there, guys. And let me grab a couple of more questions and see where we can go with this. But
you got a good question right there. Somebody asked about if my dad would have ever been the boss of the outfit. Frank, if your dad had never got arrested, you think he could have become the boss of the outfit? That's a good question. So my dad was very smart. There's street guys and there's guys that make money in the outfit. Okay, I mean, there's really three things, right? A good earner, master thief, or a violence. And my dad was good at all three of those. The problem was he had an uncontrollable violent temper, and he was constantly warned, and it kept him from rising further and faster in the mob. My dad used to always tell me, Frank, I never want to talk about moving up because I'm comfortable where I'm at. He says, you talk about moving up because the guys above you start getting nervous, the guys below you, because you don't talk about stuff like that. He says, you do your job, you do what they tell you to do, and you always turn in money, don't take money from them.
When was your father made outfit boss, is wondering?
Yeah, I got the exact date, but I believe it's in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. It took a while for him and my uncle to get made. I do believe they got made the same time Jimmy Marcello did, and in the two Tonys, Zizzo and Chiamanti.
Did he ever talk about it to you? Did he ever tell you what the ceremony was like, or was there a ceremony? What did he tell you?
The ceremony. I mean, it's pretty basic, what he told me, and you talk to other people in other states. I mean, first of all, people could probably tell us Adam more about the ceremony. It's been on so many things. But he had said you're sponsored by a captain. He was sponsored by Angelo LaPietra, his captain, him and my uncle, and they were told to go somewhere, and they were going to be picked up and brought somewhere. They told me it was a restaurant. So my dad wouldn't tell me specifics a lot of times so that I couldn't. That's his way. He says, I'm not going to tell you if I killed somebody. I'm not going to tell you who I was with. Although later on in prison, he was telling me a lot. I never thought he would. But I guess there was a closed restaurant out near Queen of Heaven Ceremony out in Hillside area out there. And they went to this restaurant. And my uncle described the whole thing too in the trial. But for my dad, it was a little more vague. He says, he says they prick your finger, blood brothers, and they make you make all these promises. So they burn a holy card in your hand for two reasons. One, they want to see if you're going to flinch. And number two is you will burn in hell. Like this card is burning in your hand if you betray your new family. And you had to put your new family ahead of your blood family and ahead of God. And
burn the picture right there in your hand.
Yeah, you would cup your hands almost like, people take communion and stuff. So it was, and then they told me a few other people that were there at that time when he told me, because I was still young in the 70s, I was in my late teens, but they didn't, he didn't go into detail. Years later, I found out he told me that, El Torbeni was at the table, so he was telling me different people that were there. And, it wasn't a big excitement for my dad and my uncle because my dad felt that it is a nice honor, but there's more control involved with it. He says, my dad would turn in anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 a month to his bosses. Okay, when he was told him and my uncle were told to do something, they did. My dad was low key. We didn't drive a Mercedes or BMWs. We drove Fords and Chevys. My dad hated, don't ever be a spot cone. Don't be a bully. I wish I would have listened to everything because for a while I did become a little bit of a spot cone, which I'm not proud of. But so yeah, he just generalized it. But he says now I have somebody to answer to. He said if I want to go on vacation, I have to answer to him. So he was comfortable in what he was doing. He was putting so much money on the street. There were times where we had $1 million on the street. Okay, now. $1 million at 10% is 520% a year. It's 10% a week. So, just do the math. There's a lot of money coming in. And he was comfortable with that. My father also, there was a violent side to him when it needed to be. He also was a pretty good businessman a lot of times, especially when he was younger. Because he used to say, he says, in the movies all the time, Frank, you see guys get hurt right away. He says, that's the last thing you want to do. Is if I hurt the guy, how's he going to pay me?
Well, that makes sense. You break a guy's legs, how the hell is he going to get to work to make the money?
He would make sure he never buried anybody so he didn't get to that point. Because the first thing I want to find out is, are you married? How many kids you got? Give me a couple of your pay stubs. Because I want to know. Because I don't want to bury you. Because then when you don't have the money and you run to your wife and you crying to her, who's going to call the FBI? The guy's wife. We don't need those problems. So he'd always work out something. And, he ran it like a business.
Did your dad have any dealings with Frank Schweiss?
My dad, I don't know of any personal dealings, but my dad loved Frank Schweiss. He loved Frank Schweiss. I was friends with Frankie's daughter, Nora, for a lot of years. We grew up in the same circles. But he liked Frankie Schweiss. He says that man he used to say, one badass motherfucker.
Wow.
He used to get a kick out of that. If you were tough, he had this extra respect for you.
Your father's mentor was Angelo LaPietra?
Correct.
It was. Okay. And Adam Rogue's wondering, did your father have any dealings with Johnny DeFranzo?
That's a good question. I never got that question. Johnny was a friend of our families. My dad and Johnny were close. Many a times Johnny wanted to pull my dad with his crew. My dad used to say years later, sometimes I wish I would have went with him. He says, but I would never take that chance. I go, why, Dad? I go, Johnny's good to his guys. They all make money. He says, Frankie goes, I belong to Angelo. He says, if I go with Johnny, just because Johnny is with the right power people and Angelo's mad and he ever gets in power, I'm dead. Or maybe Johnny and Angelo are in on this. It's a trick. They want to see if I'm going to jump ship to another crew. So, but they had a dealing. Johnny and my dad owned a part of a hot dog stand on 25th and Mannheim, Judy's, for a while together. Yeah, so they did some business together, Johnny and my dad.
And it's interesting. Do you know anything about Joe Nagel?
Yeah.
Yeah? What do you know about Joe Nagel?
But my dad but well, there was a few things through the years. You know, Joe was a great moneymaker. He made a lot of money. He knew how to make money. I believe my dad said he wasn't the boss, like they were saying for a while, but he was a high-ranking, well-respected guy in the mob. He had a lot of power. Joe and my dad had a fallout years later. Joe's son started working with my dad. He actually was part of the case. Okay, and I don't think that, you know. And my dad used to say that I think his son's name is Nick. He says, I don't think Nick knows how much me and his dad disliked each other. I think it was more of a dislike with Joe for my dad, and I don't know why he never said. But I know there was, the only positive thing he ever said was there was a guy, Philly Telemail, that used to work with us. Joe ran him off because he was always getting in some kind of trouble. So my dad took him and he said, the only guy that could ever control Philly Telemail, Joe Nagall said, was my dad. So that's pretty much about, you know, the extent of my dad and Joe, you know.
Hey guys, hit the like button. There's over 200 of you in here, and you only have 105 likes. Hit the damn like button. Get the YouTube algorithm out there. T Dizzle, I'm glad that you think I've been hitting it out of the park lately. If you guys didn't see it, John Drummond was on the other day. Did you catch that?
I didn't. I was working, but
okay.
John's a great guy. I spent time with him. I did some interviews with him. You know, he was a great guy. I mean, and he's a great guy. Great guy.
Right. Two, I wanted to ask you about. Number one, first time you and I ever talked was right after we lost Frank Calabrese, and I picked up his phone, and your number was in there, and I called you. You and Frank knew each other. What was that relationship like?
Well, I knew of Frank on the street. I know that I never went there. I think my brothers did, but a lot of people went. His brother Joe, real nice guy, well-respected guy. I was a barber. I had to get a place out on Cumberland. My relationship with Frank was, so there's a lot of stuff that we talked about, some stuff that I didn't agree with what he said. So, you know, I called him out on it, on that stuff, but we had a nice relationship, and Frank's got some great stories. I went and worked for Frank at the MobCon. Me and a couple guys from New York did. Frank would refer people to my tours. I referred them to your guys' tours. The only thing that I will say publicly, because I'm not going to sit here and not say anything negative or positive, was that when Frank was talking about, he had gone public and said that he was in the car with my dad. He pulled a gun on him, and my dad started crying and begged for his life. I confronted Frank on that because I knew it was not true. And there was a lot of people on the street that knew both of them and said, no way, no way. I mean, my dad would have probably tried to talk himself out of it. And who wouldn't if a guy's got a gun on you, right? Sure. I don't believe the gun was never pulled. I do believe that Frank and my dad had a relationship, but not a close relationship, more of a competitive relationship. My dad used to say that Tony was because we were close with the Spilaccio family, which is a whole story in itself at some time on. But
I was going to ask, how close were you with Tony?
I wasn't close with Tony. I was close with Michael Spilaccio. Dr. Pat was my dentist. Our families were close. Okay. Tony was out in Vegas, and, you know, I only met him a handful of times at doings, just like anybody else, you know, but I was a young kid when I met him. So, but I did know his brother, Michael. I knew a lot of family members, and I really don't want to go into that too much right now. We will, because there's a whole thing on that. But Frank grew up with Tony, and Tony had this liking for Frank for a long time, and he kept him by his side. Some people used to wonder why Tony would do that, because Frank was always getting in trouble. Sometimes they call him kind of like a cowboy, you know, Robin and all that stuff. Other than that, I mean, we had some great conversations together, me and Frank, and, you know, talking about different things and different people, and you know, he really built up a lot of this stuff too. So that was good. So, sorry that he had to come down with that with the COVID and all that.
All right, Alberto Lopez, what do you think about Red Wimette?
We've talked a few times. I like Red. Red was what I have in common that we haven't had a chance to talk about, and I told him that I would do his show, is the porn business in Chicago, the adult bookstores. That was huge, you know. And if you watch that video that Red's in, that was played at the conference too. I mean, that's a hell of a video. You got a little idea. Red was able to get out Frankie, get a little idea of what Frankie Weiss was like, you know. And it's not easy to go sit in a room with a wire on, or whether the room's wired with Frankie Weiss, because you know. So, you know, credit to that. But we have a lot to talk about in the future. And again, we haven't met in person yet, but we've talked on the phone a few times. And I'm interested to talk about the whole adult bookstore porn industry in Chicago. And I'm sure we'll cross a lot of familiar stories and stuff.
Well, I'm sure at some point the paths will definitely cross, and there'll definitely be a lot to talk about. I'm certain. Tedford Von Patriot, thank you very much. Appreciate the super sticker, and glad that you're enjoying the content. Homer Bryant said that he has your book. It's great, and you should do another book. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. I am going to do another book. There's been a movie project I've been working on for 10 years. I'm not at liberty to announce it yet, but we're about 95% there. Screenplay's done, A-list director attached, a couple A-list actors attached. It's all ready to go. And I'm kind of waiting to get that done. And then I'm going to sit down. So the guys that wrote the first book with the Zimmerman brothers, they wrote Michael Strahan's books, Trace Atkins. They wrote all the Sonny Barger Hells Angels books. They're easy reads for all of you that read it. It is an easy read. They're great writers. We have over 8,000 words or 800,000 words. I have all my father's journals, everything. We want to do another book. We're just trying to figure out what direction to go with it. So we're taking our time with it.
So thanks for the question there, John O. And Larry Lapper wants to know, what's the beef with Ronnie Sr. and Johnny Apes? So you're laughing. I have no idea what the hell I'm reading. I'm just reading these names. I don't know who they are.
Yeah. So it wasn't. I mean, there's a long story there too. With that, you know, so Johnny was running everything. Johnny Apes, great guy. My dad couldn't say enough about him all the time. Johnny was running everything. When Ronnie got back out, when my dad went in prison, Ronnie was running everything on the street. And I'm not clear if it was my dad or if it was Ronnie, like some people claim. But Ronnie was called to go see Johnny Apes, and he didn't go. He didn't go a few times, and Johnny had some questions about some stuff that was going on. There was some heat going on. There was some alleged hearsay of Ronnie maybe dealing with some Latino gangs with cocaine and stuff. I don't know any of that. I know that, you know, there was a lot going on, and they had Ronnie killed, and they had Ronnie killed without my father, you know, letting my father know, hey, he needs to do this. According to my father, they didn't come to him and say, while he was in prison, they messaged him and they make sure Ronnie goes in. Now, I knew Ronnie. I knew Ronnie very well. I know that the family very well. If my dad, Ronnie would never not tell my dad, hey, Johnny Apes, they call it whistling you in. Johnny's whistling me in. What should I do? Ronnie would do exactly what my dad said. My dad was claiming to me when I went to see him in prison that Ronnie never told him and just decided not to go. I don't know if I can believe that, because Ronnie did what my dad said. And if you're called by a boss to go in, if you're doing stuff in the neighborhood and you're called a few times, sometimes something like that is going to happen. And that's what happened. And I honestly believe that once that happened, they were prepared to, when my dad got out, to probably go after him, probably go after my uncle, and probably go after me. There was some moves being made. They also went after Tony Schiamanti. So there was some stuff going on. There was some moves being made, and that's my understanding from my dad of why Johnny gave the order to have Ronnie killed.
All right, I got a question here from Ryan Brown. Ryan, by the way, it's good to have you with us today, buddy. I hope you're having a great day. Frank, this question's for you. If you at all, did you know Harry Ailman, and what kind of guy was he like when it wasn't business?
Okay, I don't know Harry Ailman personally. He was in prison most of the time, but I was around his family and all the people that were close to him, and I never heard anything bad about him as a person. Around all the people, I heard that he was a very ballsy guy. And, you know, I heard a story about him just walking on the street down on Taylor Street and shooting a guy right in front of everybody with just a mask on or something, you know, but everybody knew it was him. Gary was, yeah, I mean, I know his whole family. I know his whole family. I know everybody around him, and I don't have anything bad to say. There's nothing I've ever experienced that I've seen it. He was kind of like a, you know, like Frankie Weiss, my dad, a lot of guys that were tough, you know, that, you know, there were two sides. These guys, when you're in this life, you have two sides to you, two personalities, okay? You have a street personality. You can't show weakness on the street. You show weakness, people will take advantage of it at times. And then around your family, like I said earlier, you don't bring it around your family. So there's a lot of people out there that will tell you that their family, they have a whole different view. There's people out there that never seen the bad side of my father. And when they tell me, you know, your dad was good to me, I was like, well, don't ever forget that, because he did have a good side. So same thing with Harry or Frankie Weiss or any of these guys. There was good sides, you know. These men that I met as a young person, they were all very respectful and very nice. I would never had no idea until I learned later on their other side. I wouldn't mess with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you know, and I like that, Frank, when you're asked about somebody, if you don't know them, you're like, hey, you know, I've heard this, I've heard that. you know, David Collum wants to know the name of the tour company in Vegas. Look at the bottom of the screen down there, David. There's a phone number there. It's Vegas Specialty Tours. And if you do the mob tour, use code MOBVLOG. You get 20% off. Actually makes the ticket less than $100. Although I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to do that with the way that prices of petrol are going. So,
and also, Adam, if they enjoy what they're watching today with me and you, we are, you know, we're talking about doing some stuff in Vegas together. If it's not tours, private appearances.
And you knew my mentor, Robert Allen, because you went to the MobCon and did MobCon with Robert Allen. You put that together.
Definitely. I mean, it was a great idea. I mean, I had fun. We all went. We volunteered our time and we sold books. That's how we made our money. We really supported those guys in trying to get that going. And there was a lot of guys that showed up and tried to support them.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because that's how this channel even came to be, was when Frank came to me and said, you know, Denny Griffin and I think a MobCon would be a good idea. And I said, I don't know, man. Like, trying to get everybody to come out here and selling registrations, and well, what a damn bunch of work. I said, look, these guys are doing YouTube interviews, and Frank had done a YouTube interview that got a lot of views, and he was getting some calls. You know, it was over 1 million views, and he was getting calls to do tours with him. And we used to have Frank do cameos on the mob tour, which Robert started, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And then Frank started doing private tours. And speaking of, let's put this up here so you guys can take a look. You told me you're heading back to Chicago for a bit.
Doing tours in May and June and part of July. And then, you know, during the meantime, you know, planning to make be more active in Las Vegas. But yeah, I'll be in. I have the tours up on my site, and I have some speaking events lined up too. I do a lot of speaking events also, so I'm looking forward to going back. And my tours are all private now, so I don't do bus tours with groups. I'll do a private group up to 40, but it's not I take to get a seat bus now. I guess the world's a little different out there now, and it seems like people are enjoying the private tours more.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that, you know, where you get the that personal, you know, feeling whenever, you know, it's one-on-one with people. So a few more questions. The hierarchy. Everybody wants to know about the hierarchy in the Chicago outfit. By the way, guys, hit the like button if you're just coming in here. Be sure to hit the like button. I can't believe you got almost 250 people in here, only 143 likes. Come on, hit the damn button. What's the matter with you guys? We got Frank Calabrese Jr. on today. And the question is from Joey Iupa, what was the outfit's hierarchy like in the 90s? Like, who was the boss, underboss, etc.?
You know, clearly Joey Iupa was the boss when in the 90s. When I was growing up around in the 80s, it was Joey Iupa that was the boss. Those were questions that I was a need to know. Okay, Angelo was our boss. His brother Jimmy ran the crew with Angelo. God, I'm trying to think in the 90s what time. I mean, I've watched the different bosses of different people go through, but I don't know if to sit down here right now. I'd have to sit down and figure out a chart of who's what and where. There were. I don't know, in the early 80s, there was a chart that came out. There was charts that come out all the time. And people on the inside, some of the charts, they'd laugh. I remember guys that got on the chart say, "Who do I call for my check? I haven't got one yet." I know that it was changing a lot. There was a lot going on and a lot changing. In the 90s, yes, a lot. But even in the 80s, there was a lot of changes going on.
So
also a lot of killings too in the 80s.
There's a lot of what? I didn't hear you there.
Killings in the 80s, a lot of mob killings in the 80s. It's in my book. We talk about it. I mean, the Spilaccios, Ficarata. I mean, there's a lot of people that were killed. There was a lot of moves being made. There was a lot of paranoia going on. This is as powerful as these guys were, as smart as these guys were, as tough as these guys were. There's a paranoia that goes through it. They look for you to say one wrong thing or look at them, and sometimes a guy can lose his life for that. Not everybody in that life that I experienced over the years lived the life the way it was supposed to be lived. Okay, my father started out good, but then he turned into this sociopathic killer, paranoid all the time. And the same as his boss, Angelo LaPietro. Okay, Angelo, what bothered my dad too is Angelo had fell out of favor with some of the bosses for a while, and that hurt my dad and his crew because they couldn't get stuff they asked for. But there was a lot of paranoia that goes on with these guys, and again, somebody talking about moving up, but it was always said that Butch Petrocelli, one of the reasons, there was a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons that he got killed was because he was talking about how he was going to be the boss one day, which isn't, my dad used to say, it's not a good thing to say. A few other reasons. Allegedly, Harry Allman's family wasn't getting the money they were supposed to be getting. And the big thing was his fight with Tony Borsellino, who was a dear friend of my dad, and Butch's fight with Tony turned into Tony getting killed and then Butch getting killed. So, in that life, if two guys are fighting all the time, these guys don't sit down too many times. Remember one time my dad told me that a bunch of crews were fighting and Joey had said enough with this fucking fighting. If you guys keep fighting, I'm just going to put a squash on everything, or people are going to start going, cut it out, So, they were fighting over small things too. Even though there's only one family in Chicago, crews did bump heads once in a while, usually over a player or something they're getting money from or something, but it got straightened out, I'd have to sit down and look at in the 90s exactly. I'd have to go through the timeline. It's all blurring in my head.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean I'm 100% right. I just what I know, what I was told.
Right. DPN, Disorderly Product News, which you did an interview with Disorderly Product News. Did you ever see Frank Calabrese at the Circle on top of the tank in the early 80s?
That's where we hang, and that's where we would hang in the Circle, in Elmwood Park. Yes.
Yeah, Larry Lapper. Why did Angelo fall out? LaPietra.
I don't know. I wasn't told. I don't know. I know he had a fallout with Turk Torillo. There was a little bit of a fallout. Maybe, and I don't know why, but my dad said we weren't getting a lot of stuff we were asking for. At the time, there was some off-track betting parlors. We couldn't get any, he said, and he believed it had something to do with Angelo falling out with Turk. So I couldn't answer you honestly why.
Okay, everybody asks this question, so we have to ask it. Is there still a mob in Chicago?
I don't believe there is, and I'll tell you why. Because the guys that are left, they have money, they're smart, they know that there's so many guys out there. It's not only do you have to worry about what you do, but you have to worry about what everybody around you is doing. Okay, because if they get caught doing something they're not supposed to be doing, you ain't gonna know until all of a sudden one day you found out that they wore a wire on you. The money that we used to make, I guess this question was answered earlier too. I mean, everything that we pretty much used to do is legal now. So, these guys moved on, they're older. I mean, they got you down as a leader. Some of these guys they have down as leaders. These guys are older, they got money. You think they want to go away to prison for the last 20 years and have some guard telling them what to do, what not to do? Right. And your kids are in legitimate businesses because you're not supposed to bring your kids into this life. So they're a great consigliere for your kid who has a legitimate business to help them. And some of them are doing very well.
Wow. Steve Karras says, you look great, Frank. And thanks for the birthday wishes.
Hi, Steve.
Appreciate that, Stephen. Today, the mob, I say it on the tours out here, that the politicians took it all. It's like we said in the beginning, politicians took it all. And look at even the loan sharking, these payday loan places, they pass laws and they can charge as much interest, as much juice, just like the outfit did, or damn close to.
There's still stuff that's going to be around, but they don't have the politicians no more. They don't have law enforcement. They don't have judges. They don't have tons of money. And that's all stuff you need to run a criminal organization. So what do? You look for the next best thing. And then you start learning, hey, there are ways to make a lot of legitimate money. I'm going to use what I learned on the street, but I'm going to use it in a smart way. And a lot of them do that. And a lot of these guys could have ran big companies and been very successful. So, it's the choices they had. Remember, in Chicago, you were supposed to make a better life for your family. That's what this was all about. Okay.
I just worked on a video last night. It's going to go up later today about Al Capone. And Al Capone, I didn't know this about Al Capone, but he was a bookkeeper for a construction company. He worked in a paper factory, a munitions shop. He worked at a candy store, a bowling alley. He worked in places and saw how businesses ran. And he also learned how to run businesses all the way down from the bookkeeping to how processes. And when Torrio, got the bootlegging operation going in the, beginning of the Prohibition, it opened the doors for him to use those street smarts, book smarts that he had to run an operation. So, yeah, I mean, you say it's a bunch of street guys running an operation, but it takes some brains.
I say there's two parts to there's street guys and there's guys that know how to make money. Okay. I mean, you take a guy like Paul Ricca that you don't hear a lot about. I mean, there was a man that was very, very powerful, very, very smart. And then you go down and you show Tony Accardo. I mean, you go through this stuff. And I know somebody wrote in there, we're not going to talk about it today, but at some point I do talk about it on the tours, and we will definitely talk about it in detail at any private meetings. But, people say, why do I think Tony Accardo was the one that killed Sam Giancana? And I will tell you, when you're done, you can agree or disagree with me, because naturally both of us weren't there. But
you're saying that Tony Accardo killed Giancana?
Yes.
Wait, hold on. We got to talk
about that, but I'm not going to talk about it right now.
We'll save it for next time.
On the surface, people are like, "What are you, fucking nuts? He's a boss." But if you know the way Tony Accardo operated and how smart of a man he was, when I get done telling you what I tell you, it all makes sense. That doesn't mean that it's 100%, but it's in Family Secrets trial. There was, at the time, from the early 1900s, there was over, I think it was about 1,112 gangland slayings with 14 convictions. In this case alone, there was 18 convictions and close to 35 cases solved or / the books closed on the case, that the government was comfortable enough that they had the shooters. One of the cases that they closed was Tony Accardo and Sam Giancana, and Tony being the shooter.
And we're going to talk about that. You want to do another? Interview? With I say with me, but with us. Okay.
Well, I mean, people are enjoying. I mean, we've been jumping around a little, and it's okay if that's what they want. But if the people are enjoying it, I mean, yeah. Again, and what I love, Adam, is look, people out there, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying. I'm not sitting here telling you God's word. I'm telling you what I know, what I experienced, what I thought while I was in this life, and everything I learned that I took away from it. Okay. And I'm just here to tell you, this is mine. This is me.
All right. And one last time, guys, check out that familysecretstours.com. Book a tour with Frank Calabrese. He's going to be in Chicago for 90 days, starting when?
Beginning of May. If you go on my site, I have all my dates up.
There you go. So go check it out, guys. Check out Frank Calabrese. Order a copy of his book. You can get the signed copy, right, at familysecretstours.com.
Yes.
That's right. Okay. So go there, check it out, guys.
I was reading some of the comments. Everybody's leaving a lot of nice comments and a lot of good questions. And we're going to take these questions and we're going to try to put them in some kind of format. And
yes.
If Adam invites me back, we would probably
no, definitely. What we can actually say, hey, you want to come back on and let's stick to this particular topic. But today, I mean, today's the first day that anybody's even
around.
What's that?
I said this way we can cover everybody's questions without jumping around.
Yeah, we can stay on one topic and we can work through a topic. So Adam Rogue's asking, please do another interview. Quick question from Redwood Matt. If you did it over again, would it be a life of crime?
No, that's not me. That's not me. You know, I won the Golden Gloves in 1979. I was undefeated. People that know me, I can handle myself, but I don't like violence. You know, I was good at it, but it wasn't me. And that's why I kept trying to leave. I just didn't, I like to work, and you had to be a certain person for that. I did it because I had to. I did it for my dad. I never bought into the mob. I bought into my dad and my uncle. Not that there was anything wrong with them. I just didn't buy into it. That wasn't me. That wasn't my friends in my neighborhood. I have so many friends. The family members were involved. They're legitimate people. They're enjoying their lives. And if I had my chance, yeah. What I put my family through, what I put everybody through, no, I wouldn't even entertain the thought again.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I worked in strip clubs, and the guy who brought me into the strip club business, he said, man, this business, it's like the mob, Adam. Once you're in, you can't get out. Well, and I got stuck for four years of my life, but I did get out. I got out here to Vegas, and here I am living the dream, baby.
and I'm not sitting here on the show bashing the mob or bashing my father. I'm telling my story. Let me tell you something. It was always understood to me that the mob was an underground organization to protect their families. It started in Sicily, which was constantly, invaded by other countries and everything. And then they brought it over here. And that was the thing. But sometimes power, money can get to some people's heads. So there were people that lived it all the time. Better neighborhood for your a better life for your family, a good, safe neighborhood. Some guys live that life. I mean, two guys that I knew offhand personally was Dominic Cortina and Donald Angelini. I mean, these guys were businessmen. They were smart at making money. They knew that violence was part of it, but it was the last resort. Tony Accardo trying to move away, and I do believe that Enrique had a part of it. They were trying to move away from that and go more legit, and I think a big thing that turned that around was when Tony's house got robbed. Tony Accardo's house got robbed. He took it personal, so he put this vendetta out in the streets. I've talked to FBI while this was going on with the case, and I says they told me that they believed Accardo was trying to go legit, that they started shrinking their crews on organized crime because terrorism was around the corner. Once all those thieves started getting killed and left all over the streets, they tripled up and they had a vendetta against the mob, and slowly it went down.
Man, and we're going to talk a lot more about this. We're going to have you on again, definitely, Frank. It was a pleasure. Thank you for spending your time with us. Guys, hit the like button. Don't forget to do that. All right. There's like 250 of you in here, and we have
Adam's got a guy.
Come on, hit the button. All right. So anyway, guys, it's been fun. Frank, thank you so much again for your afternoon. And everybody, one more time, go to familysecretstours.com and be sure to get a copy of Family Secrets book. And there it is across the bottom of the screen on the ticker there, familysecretstours.com. And if you're going to be in Chicago, maybe you live in Chicago, maybe you're near Chicago, go do a tour with Frank. Get on his tour. I may go to Chicago and go do it in the next few months. Okay. I'm serious. I might come out there to do it, just to go do it and to go say hi to my uncle, you know, because I haven't seen my uncle in a minute. I haven't seen him in several months. Anyway, one more time, Frank, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank everybody too.
We'll have you again. Guys, it's been fun. Thanks again. Mob Vlog.